If you had to choose between total domination, being enslaved by the most brutally sadistic entity in the entire universe, and complete annihilation, experiencing a violent revolution at the hands of a mighty four-armed demon, what would you pick? If you chose the first option, take shelter, watch as the sky above turns an ominous grey, and great ebony hooks thrust through the storm clouds, sinking into the earth and ripping the very landscape into the abyss. As for the second option, well, the skies will turn to ash, veined with streaks of volcanic red. Crimson-tipped spikes will emerge from the soil, and Oblivion gates like portals into hell will appear, spewing hordes of Daedric monsters into the realm. I'm afraid to say, ladies and gents, that regardless of which catastrophic event you chose, you're most likely going to be slaughtered anyway. For many of Tamriel's inhabitants, these horrific scenarios came true, as Tamriel came agonizingly close to destruction on two separate occasions. Two Daedric princes set their sights on conquering Nirn, but which one came closer to succeeding? The first of these doomsday events occurred in the year 582 of the Second Era, carried out by the most unsavory bastard in the whole Elder Scrolls universe, Molag Bal. From the frozen, desolate expanses of Cold Harbor, the lord of subjugation and enslavement was growing so avaricious that the steady influx of souls to his realm simply was not enough to satiate him. Molag Bal has a lot of titles, and a towering reputation to uphold. He's the harvester of souls, the king of rape, the corrupter, the tormentor of mankind, the lord of brutality, the sower of strife and the prince of pain. The list goes on and on. Fortunately, Bal takes great pleasure in his endeavours, and relishes every opportunity to lure sorry souls into some trap of his devising. But for every soul he harvests, there are hundreds of thousands of mortals who evade him. Tamriel is a densely populated continent after all, and no one prince can lay claim to every soul that exists there. Or can they? If any god was going to enslave the entire mortal population, who better to do so than the bloody harvester of souls and scourge of mankind? Molag Bal already had the infrastructure in place for such an inundation of captured souls. Cold Harbor resembles a grim apocalyptic reflection of Nirn, and rumour has it that there are even defiled copies of major Tamrielic landmarks, like the White Gold Tower, only it is charred black and spattered with blood and excrement, rather than pristine and glistening gold. The fertile ground may be replaced with heavy sludge, and the air smells of decaying flesh and sweet perfume, but there is no shortage of space for every soul to experience eternal torment. Among the blackened ruins of Cold Harbor, Molag Bal's Dremora supervised the slave labor, ensuring Bal's quotas of torment are met, and guaranteeing that no soul is given a moment's respite from their suffering. All Bal needed now was a means to migrate the population of Tamriel into his Daedric realm. Before long, his plan was set in motion, and the plane meld could soon begin. The plan was surprisingly straightforward. Bal built the Wailing Prison to accommodate the abundance of souls that would soon flow into his realm. Then he constructed the Dark Anchors, which were enormous interplanar hooks, designed to pierce the boundary between Mundus and Oblivion, and then sink into the ground on Tamriel. For such a plan to work, Bal needed a mooring point, a secure location that would keep Cold Harbor still and allow Nirn to be pulled in. For this purpose, he built the Great Shackle, to which all the Dark Anchors were rooted. The invasion was ready to commence. Many centuries later, it was a different prince who set his sights on the mortal realm, specifically Tamriel. Mehrunes Dagon needed no excuse to initiate an insurgence. He harboured no grudges against the powers of the time. For Dagon, revolutions were as simple as flipping an hourglass. He saw the mortals of Nirn the same way we see the pyramid of sand at the bottom of the hourglass. By tipping it upside down, the grains on top would be the first to fall, and would end up on the bottom of the new hierarchy. Dagon's sphere encompasses change, ambition, destruction, revolt, and energy. All of these elements are essential to this process. Overall, he seeks change. Those not in power need ambition to reach the top. Destruction is a necessary byproduct of overthrowing the systems, and a great deal of energy is exerted by all parties in the anarchy that ensues. And what do we call this chaotic power struggle? We call it revolution. With all of this in mind, we don't need some grand scheme for Mehrunes Dagon's invasion. Bal wanted to enslave souls. Dagon simply wanted to see the powerful fall from grace, and the dregs of society occupy the wreckage of the once glorious palaces. This has been Dagon's ideology since he was created in the bowels of Lig. The Magnagi created him to be a prince of good, to embody hope, to be a voice for the voiceless. This hope could not be contained even by the gods. Hope spread like a brush fire, and Dagon used hope as a bludgeon, violently battering those in positions of power. But for both Molag Bal and Mehrunes Dagon, invading the mortal realm was not something they could do on a whim. Long ago, Akatosh had entered a covenant with Saint Alicia of the Mortals to prevent these exact things from occurring. Both princes needed their inside man. For Molag Bal, this was the infamous Outma Lich, Manamako, also known as the King of Worms. This necromancer was once a member of the Sijic Order, before he was exiled for his pursuit of sinister magics. The time was ripe for the plane meld in the year 578 of the Second Era. There was unrest in the Imperial Province, and Varan Aquilarius, the Duke of Coral, was looking for a way to legitimize his claim to the Ruby Throne. Manamako convinced Varan to attempt a ritual that would allow him to become Dragonborn. They obtained the Amulet of Kings, and convened before the Dragonfire in the Temple of the One. Manamako deceived his companions, and instead of reigniting the Dragonfires, he used the amulet to further weaken the barrier between Mundus and Oblivion. This event became known as the Soul Burst. A massive arcane explosion sent a wave of magical energy outwards from the Imperial City, and sundered the sacred veil between the realms of Mortal and Daedra. This facilitated Bal's initiation of the plane meld, as the souls of those within the blast's radius were disrupted from their mortal hosts, and Bal used their disturbed souls to power his anchors. Dagon's disciple was a Bosmer, or so he claims, named Mankar Cameron. This Mer was a descendant of the infamous Haemon Cameron, the Cameron usurper, who butchered his way up the west coast of Tamriel, conquering parts of Colovia, Hammerfell and High Rock. His rampage was brought to an end by the United Kings of High Rock. The usurper's illegitimate son Mankar was not so impulsive, and had plotted meticulously to make Dagon's invasion a reality. Mehrunes Dagon gave him the Mysterium Xarxes, a powerful artifact written by the prince himself. And with it, Mankar created his own pocket realm of Oblivion, and he learned the prophetic secrets hidden within its pages. He documented what he had discovered in his own manifesto, the Mythic Dawn Commentaries. He denounced the Divines as traitors to Lorkhan, and believed the missing god was actually a Daedric prince, whose plane of Oblivion was Tamriel. These commentaries are cryptic from start to finish, but using the first letter of each paragraph, a concealed message is revealed. Green Emperor Way, where tower touches midday sun. This message leads the reader to the hideout of the Mythic Dawn, a clandestine recruitment strategy. Mankar Cameron and his Mythic Dawn cultists would initiate the invasion by assassinating the Emperor, stealing the Amulet of Kings, and extinguishing the Dragon Fires, weakening the barrier between Oblivion and Mundus. With the Emperor killed and Akatosh's covenant broken, Dagon launched his offensive, and portals to the Deadlands sprung up across the continent. The simple fact that I'm here talking to you about the two greatest Daedric existential threats to grip Tamriel proves one thing: both of these invasions failed. If they had succeeded, Tamriel would be a wasteland, and everyone inhabiting the land would either be dead, enslaved, or worse. So who came closer? Well, we have to first acknowledge the fact that Molag Bal's plan was much more ambitious. Both princes wished to conquer Tamriel, but Bal literally wanted to rip Nirn out of the mortal realm and into Cold Harbor. The dark anchors hooked into the ground and gradually ripped parts of Nirn away, which would float slowly through the portals to Bal's realm. Once in Cold Harbor, the pieces would reform in the Planar Vortex, an interplanar realm designed specifically to facilitate the convergence of Nirn with Cold Harbor. Let's not get bogged down with the details, because while Molag Bal was setting his scheme in motion, his enemies were already undermining his progress. The Daedra Lord Meridia, who has always despised Molag Bal and his undead vampire servants, planted her own agent into the Fighters Guild. With this Argonian leading them, the entire weight of the guild was focused on sabotaging Bal's anchors and killing his Dremora servants. At around the same time, a mysterious hero named the Soulless One had freed the companions from Bal's clutches, reclaiming the Amulet of Kings and defeating Manamako in the process. Molag Bal was beginning to worry that his plan would be undone by these meddling mortals, so he sent an envoy to usurp the imperial throne, posing as the Empress Regent. She was then tasked with tracking down an Elder Scroll which could be used to speed along the plane meld process. This plan failed, and the primary Dark Anchor looming over the White Gold Tower was destroyed. The Alliance War was still waging as all of this took place, and this disunity between the Tamrielic races greatly benefited Molag Bal. However, Vanis Galerian and the Mages Guild, as well as Meridia's Fighting Guild, finally managed to arrange a truce between the three factions. This consolidated force launched a counter-invasion against Bal and infiltrated Cold Harbor. Bal's Daedra hordes were defeated, and the Planar Vortex was destroyed. undoing all of the Prince of Domination's work. Molag Bal had landed on the shores, but his assault hadn't made it past the beaches. The retaliatory force returned to Tamriel thinking the invasion was over, but Molag Bal had only retreated to the safety of his palace. From here he devised a second attempt at the plane meld, only the 5 companions journeyed to Heart's Grief to confront Bal once and for all. The Soulless One channeled the power of Akatosh to banish Molag Bal to the void, and the threat was officially over. Molag Bal would recover his strength in time, but his pride was gravely wounded, and he wouldn't be staging any more invasions anytime soon. Mehrunes Dagon isn't the kind of prince to be preoccupied with tyrannical fantasies. He likes to overthrow empires, not sit on the throne passing laws and settling inconsequential squabbles. Fortunately for Dagon, it's much easier to destroy than it is to build, and the mission objective he gave to his Daedra hordes was simple: demolish everything in your path. Kill every mortal in your way and raze everything else to the ground. The crisis ravaged much of Tamriel. The Argonians, believe it or not, were the only ones who dealt with the invasion effectively. The sacred hiss trees had foreseen the calamity and warned the lizards to return to Blackmarsh and prepare to defend the homeland. The Argonians rallied against the Daedra and even took the fight into Oblivion. They overwhelmed the invaders, striking with such ferocity that some of Dagon's forces even opted to close their own gates. For the rest of the continent, the Oblivion crisis could very well have been the end, and it would have been were it not for the hero of Kvatch, who recovered the Amulet of Kings, killed Mankar Cameron, and found the lost heir to the Ruby Throne. Even with hope restored, the Destroyer made it all the way to the heart of the Imperial City, and was on the verge of victory. Mortality's last hope was with Martin Septim, who shattered the Amulet of Kings and sacrificed himself to transform into an avatar of Akatosh, defeating Mehrunes Dagon in the rubble of the Temple of the One. The invasion was brought to an end, though it was a Pyrrhic victory. Tamriel was in ruins, the Empire was without an emperor, and some provinces are still reeling from the damage to the present day. Despite this, the gates were sealed, Dagon was banished, and relative peace returned to the land. With the outcomes of both invasions in mind, we can draw some conclusions about who came the closest. One thing to note is that when the plane meld came to an end, it almost seems like Tamriel resumed business as usual. Countless other things occurred in the same year, and the Second Era continues on for over 300 more years. As for the Oblivion crisis, the aftershocks caused by such a cataclysm persisted for years. New powers emerged, once prosperous cultures suffered immensely, and a general disdain for magic that sprung up after the crisis is still present today. On top of all of this, the end of the Oblivion crisis and the death of the last Septim actually served as the catalyst for the conclusion of the Third Era and the commencement of the Fourth. Mehrunes Dagon may have ultimately failed, but at least he can brag to Molag Bal that he caused a change in eras. Molag Bal was defeated in his own realm, and nothing too significant was lost to the Dark Anchors. Even the souls captured by Bal during the plane meld were set free by the Soulless One. Mehrunes Dagon's hordes reached every corner of the realm and wreaked havoc. It took a miracle to save Tamriel from its death throes, and the proof of this is immortalized in the dragon statue where the Temple of the One once stood, at the heart of Cyrodiil. Mehrunes Dagon came much closer to conquering Tamriel than Molag Bal. And there you have it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I've been Drew, and I'll see you next time.